This is Ken from Coffee Crafters, and we're going to do a short video on showing you how to do your very first roast on our machine. And it would be a big benefit if you haven't been doing a lot of research online about roasting, because if you do that, you're going to be really confused and think that you first need to go to school and have a PhD before you can roast. I'm going to show you how easy it actually is. So basically, a couple things. We're going to load the beans through the top. I've got my light turned on, and I'm going to show you how to do a roast with just one single setting that will work in almost all locations, unless you're trying to roast when it's 20 below zero in your roasting room, and then you would have to turn it up a little bit. But I really do want to demonstrate how easy it is to roast. One of the things that you're going to hear a lot about is that you have to do computer profiling to get a consistent roast. That's absolutely not true. I thought it was true because I'd done a lot of research when I started roasting, and then when I started talking to real roasters who do it for a living, they all laughed at me and said, "You've been reading that garbage online." So I'm going to show you how easy it is to roast. We're going to roast a 1-pound batch today. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to set the heat setting to 5.5, and that's just a starting point. Now I know on our roaster I can set it on 5.5 and I can do an entire roast and it's going to roast fine. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll dump a pound of beans in here. One of the things that you want to do when you first get started is look down inside the hopper and make sure that the thermocouple probe is in the bracket, pushed straight down with enough room underneath the tip for a bean to get underneath and not tipped out towards the center of the heat, or it'll read the hot air and not the beans. So I'll go ahead and dump these in here. I'm going to go over here and start the exhaust blower. Now, one of the things you can do with the Artisan 3E is you can actually start the loft and start roasting with the hood up, because as I start lofting, it's going to be venting through the back here. In fact, you can lift the hood up anytime during the roast cycle and look in there. So I'm going to establish my loft. And one of the things you want to do when you first start roasting is go ahead and, before you turn the heat on, go ahead and establish the loft a few times, and then turn it back down, turn it back up, and establish a loft. You're going to want a loft of about 3 to 5 inches in height, and that's the bean spouting above the bean bed, and that's the perfect height. So I've already got my heat to set to 5.5. One of the things that you'll notice sometimes is when you turn the heat on, depending on how high you have it set, you might get a little voltage spike that'll move your loft down a little bit. So after you turn the heat on, always check the loft and reestablish it. I'll close the hood, and to show you how easy it is, I can do this entire roast without messing with anything. Now I'm going to turn the loft down just a little bit. It's really the only thing you have to do during your first roast. And you don't have to do it. It would go ahead and roast. We're going to roast. I'm going to go ahead and start my timer here. We're going to, because we started from a cold start, this roast is going to probably take about 11 minutes, and we'll check that because we've done this quite a few times on this roaster. The sweet spot for the roaster, when you get your first roast going, you want to make sure that your total roast time is between 8 and 12 minutes. If you keep it within 8 and 12 minutes, there's not a bean on the planet you can ruin. It's going to turn out great. We've had professional cuppers come in working with all kinds of different roast profiles, and the truth is, if you get it in that sweet spot that this machine does very well, they couldn't tell the difference whether it was roasted at 11 minutes or roasted at 9 minutes. It had a great development time. The roaster has a nice consistent ramp up in temperature naturally by leaving it on one setting. So really all I'm going to do during the roast is I'm going to look down inside of here and see if my loft is getting a little too high. I turned it down just a little bit because I was talking instead of paying attention to my roasting when we started the video, and it was about 8 inches, which is a little bit too high. One of the things that you can do during the roasting, you might try playing with this on your roast after the first one. You can raise the loft and lower it a little bit to adjust the heat. So if you have a 5-inch loft going and your heat's not going up quite fast enough, you can back it off just a little bit until you got about a 3-inch loft in there, and you'll see the heat start rising a little bit faster. We'll hit first crack probably towards the 8-minute mark on this because we're from a cold start. If I was going to do a warm start on a batch right after this one, you can go right back. You can actually roast and cool at the same time. So if you are doing full loads, you could put your next load in, start roasting as the other load, the first load is cooling. So on the 1 pound batch, we're setting it at about 5.5, and that's going to be good in most locations. Obviously, if your room temperature is a little bit different, it's going to make a little bit of a difference. If we're doing full loads, 3 pounds, you can roast from 3 to 4 pounds. Somewhere in there, you'll hit the spot where you start losing efficiency by having too large of a load size. But if we were to put a 3-pound load in here, turn it up on high, you could do every load like that, and it will hit that 8 to 12 minute window. So roasting really is the easy part. Most new roasters, when they come to us, they've been doing a lot of research online, like I did before I started roasting, and very confused about computer software they thought they needed. Once they start roasting, we have over 1,300 roasters out there. I only know a handful of people that do the profiling all the time. And trust me, I'm a geek, I like technology. I kind of wanted that stuff to be true. But what I learned in the long run is that really looking at the computer was really distracting for me. What I do watch all the time is the thermometer. So this bean temperature rate of rise, I watch all the time. That's how I tell if it's in that right development cycle. We'll get up to about 560, 570 degrees roast air temperature during this roast. I'm roasting a Guatemalan bean right now, and we'll take it to about 445 degrees because I like a medium roast. That should take about 11 minutes. One of the things that also you need to look at when you first start roasting, the thermometer and thermocouple combinations are notorious for being inaccurate out of the box. They need calibrated. So in your thermometer, the package that it came in, you'll see some instructions in there, and it will show you how to set that. So the one number we all throw around in the roasting industry is 400 degrees at first crack. You get a medium density bean like this Guatemala, that's what we'll set it on. Guatemala, Colombian, something like that. And so when we're doing our roast, you might want to set that at 400. There's around here somewhere, there was a little screwdriver that you have in your packet. The flathead screw part of that, you adjust that calibration. It's got an L and an H. The H is the high temperature setting. You put that little flathead screwdriver in there. When you hit first crack, wherever it's at on the dial, adjust that to 400, and then you don't have to touch it again. And what you'll notice is that then your beans will match the color profiles that you see advertised. You'll get used to recognizing as your batches come out. If you're used to roasting to 445, when you dump it out, you'll be able to look at that and go, yeah, it's about a 445 bean. So we're coming up on 6 minutes. We're probably about a minute away from first crack. And again, this was on a cold start. So while that's getting close to first crack, if you've just plugged in your exhaust blower and you have your discharge line going from the outboard discharge side of the exhaust blower blowing to the outside, you want to make sure that you tape those seams, because the intake side that goes to the roaster and the bean cooler is all vacuum. So if there's a leak, it doesn't matter, just a little bit of air leaks in. But the discharge side is pressure, so we've had quite a few people say they get a lot of smoke in their room when they first start roasting, and it's because they didn't tape the seams on the outboard side. And remember, for maintenance down the road, you have to be able to clean your duct. So flex duct, you just take it off, throw it away, and put on new. The other ducting, you can use a duct brush and get inside. I'll lower the loft a little bit more, and I'm going to listen for that first crack. And you can audibly hear it over the exhaust blower. So we just hit 400 degrees, and there's first crack. And that's what it does if you calibrate it, you know, and now you can depend on it, because so we're going to take this to about 445 degrees, because that's what I like Guatemala roasted to. When we get close to our ending bean temperature, I'll show you how to go through the cycle. It's really easy. One of the things, now that we have first crack going, there'll be a lot of chaff coming off. If we lift that up, and I don't know, Dave, if we can zoom in there a little bit, you can see the chaff going through the back of it. If we had a black background on here, which we've done before, you can actually see the smoke going in there, so none of the smoke escapes with that up. So you could actually go through a roast cycle with that up. It vents a little bit better with it down, but it's nice because we have a light shining through the back, through the hole, and it's nice for looking inside the hopper and taking a look at where the beans are at. So we're at 420 degrees. We're at 8 minutes, 30 seconds into the roast. We haven't changed the heat dial. We have only adjusted the loft a couple times, try to keep it at that 3 to 5 inches, and that's basically all we've done. And we could do that every single time, and the coffee would be roasted perfectly. One of the things that's confusing is, if you're a coffee nerd like I am, you want to search for that absolutely perfect bean, and I might play with that myself, but the truth is, most customers don't really care about that. They wouldn't know the difference if I tweaked it a little bit. Customers want quality and consistency. So you use a quality bean going in, and then if you have a consistent heat setting that you use over and over again, it makes your roasting easy and it's very consistent. So we'll watch this bean temperature rate of rise. So if you're going to roast it to an ending bean temperature, some people would call that a roast profile. They get confused between a roast profile and a roast ramp profile. If you want to call it a roast profile, that's fine. Okay, we're coming up on 443 degrees. I'm going to open the blast gate on the cooler and get ready to dump it. I just hit 445 degrees. I went ahead and turned the heat off because I'm not going to do a load after that. If you were getting ready to do another load right after that, you dump your green beans in, reestablish the loft, leave the heat on, and keep right on roasting. So our time was right at 10 minutes on that roast. If we were going to do a roast after this one, it would cut about a minute to a minute and a half on that. It would be 8.5 minutes to 9 minutes because the machine is already warm. So cooling quickly is really, really important. So cool those beans down a dark roast, and you'll be able to roast to about 460 degrees without driving that oil out of the bean. So that was it. We just did our your first roast on the Artisan 3. I hope you found that informative. If you have any questions about roasting before you get started, call us at Coffee Crafters. We're used to working with new people. That's what we specialize in. Most of our customers have little to no roasting experience when they start, so don't hesitate to call. Thanks for watching.